being
handled through diplomatic channels. It is said there, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in that letter. But the UPDF as an institution responsible for security, and if it says the ambassador is involved in subversive activities, the security can also comment on it. So that is not unusual. Now, but let me come to the issues of international relations. Let me begin with Nicholas' statement on the responsibility to protect. But the preamble is this. Uganda has many problems. Maybe you have torture, we have corruption, we have so many things. I believe those are our problems. We should address them as Ugandans, and we should refuse foreigners to insert themselves in our affairs. That is my principle. And to you, Nicholas, if you read anything I have written, I oppose all forms of aid, whether it is humanitarian, whether it's technical, whether it's financial. You can read over the last 20 years, I have written so much about aid. I believe financial aid, for example, So what I'm saying that even interference in human rights undermines our democratic process because it hijacks the political struggle from the domestic to the international. I will give you an example, and these people of NUP are interested in power, not in democracy, I can tell you. That's why they would invite Muzungu to get involved. You see, if you are given financial aid, so the government of Uganda depends on World Bank, IMF, and other donors for money, then it has no interest in engaging me and you to build political institutions and public policies that can increase our productivity so that it can collect more tax revenues from us. It loses interest in us because the productive margin in its search for revenue does not lie in our farms, in our factories, in our gardens, our ranches. It lies in begging international donors. If very powerful rich countries come and say they are the ones supporting him, you see, democracy grows through fits and starts through over a very long period of time. And it's a journey, not a destination. I could give the history of the US, the Declaration of Independence 1772. Their constitution, which says all men are born equal, is 1789. But in 1789, only rich white men could vote. Poor white men could not vote. Black people were slaves. Native Americans could not vote. Women could not vote. You see, but through struggle, in 1830, they accepted adult male white suffrage. 1865, they abolished slavery. 1868, this 190 years later, is when America passes a law saying nobody will be stopped from voting on the basis of their former condition of servitude or their race. But black people never got a right to vote until 1965, 150 years later. You see, so the struggle for Uganda's democracy is a struggle we should be involved in. We will not achieve what we want in our lifetime, but we recognize that we are always part and parcel of the struggle to expand democratic rights. Now, how does foreign interference undermine this struggle? And this is not to criticize the opposition in Uganda, it's just to criticize the structural, it raises a structural point. Because if I am Kyagulanyi, I am Mawodo here, there is a powerful country supporting me, it may, recognizing that I'm backed by the Americans and the Europeans, it may reduce my incentive to engage in negotiations and compromise with Museveni in order to achieve, maybe I may not achieve 100% of what I want, I may achieve 10%, but 10% is a good progress for us. The Americans up to now are still involved in the democratic struggle. They have not arrived there. So, backed by powerful, the Batoro call it kuterektigi. I don't know how I can translate it in English. Is to give somebody such confidence that you take away their incentive to compromise. But democracy is built on compromise. Let's come to humanitarian aid. Let's come to practical everything. Whenever foreigners insert themselves in our issues, they may be even well-intentioned, but they change the structure of incentives. Because if you know that whenever there is a famine, somebody will come and give you food, then the government's incentive to build institutions and policies to guard against famine are reduced. Because you know something will come from outside. So, avoid foreign interference in our affairs. Even Uganda's involvement in Somalia, DRC, and Sudan. Read my ratings. I've said let those Congolese fight until someone wins. Let the South Sudanese win. Uganda can never fix Congo, I can tell you, even if we stay there for 100 years. If we left Somalia today, Al-Shabaab will take over. And I've written articles suggesting that Uganda is stopping the internal process of Somalia from maturing. And that's why we are stuck there. Whatever Museveni benefits from it, whatever delusions possess his mind, we can never fix Somalia. Only Somalis can fix Somalia. Now, let me come to the points of international law. Responsibility to protect. Nicholas. Who assigns this responsibility to who? Can Uganda undertake the responsibility to protect? Because as I said earlier, they went to Libya to protect against Gaddafi. But right now, people are being killed. Why are they not protecting? Why are they not exercising it in Israel? They say this whataboutism, but it tells you something. Why is there this selective application of international rules? If Uganda, from international law, which says respect sovereign equality and respect don't interfere in internal affairs, you say, no, for us we have a rules-based international order. Who has set these rules? We can interfere to promote democracy and human rights. Who defines what a country is a democracy? I don't think the United States is a democracy. It's ruled by a few corporate barons. And other Americans are not saying that government. Should Uganda interfere? So these are tricks used by the powerful to disorganize the weak. And Africans should see that. But Africans are so internally divided. That is why IMF can come here and dictate policies. Our story is told by the CNN and the BBC and New York Times. Our hungry are fed by the World Food Program. Our poor are saved by Bono and Angelina Jolie. Tell me one aspect of our life that is not being shaped from outside. If you read the Muzungu literature at colonialism, they were saying we are children, and like all children, we should be governed permanently. So why don't we as Ugandans, I'm challenging you people in the question, why don't you feel that without these Americans, we can fight torture? We may not win today, but we can improve the situation of governance in our country. Why can't we fight for our democratic rights? Why do we, who helped the Americans or the British or the French? Who did it? Why do we expect others to come and help us? In any case, isn't it obvious that others would have interests, and the interests may be different from ours? Why do we allow outsiders to insert themselves in our politics? Now let me come to the issue of General Saleh. General Saleh is, you are saying is not a government official, is actually a senior presidential advisor. He is also the coordinator of Operation World School. Those are government positions. He's also a member of the Army High Command, and he's a permanent member. But even informal, he's a brother of the president. He's a hero of the NRM struggle. All these aspects give him incredible influence, access and influence. He can call his brother anytime and he has influence. Let me tell you, there is no system in the world, Maodo, which works purely on formal institutions. All states have formal structures, but these formal structures are embedded in informal networks and ties. It is the informal networks and ties that allow formal structures to work. I'll give you an example. The world almost came to an end during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. At the height of the crisis, President Kennedy could not get many issues through the Army and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He sent his brother, Robert, to meet a man called, Anatoly Dublin, who was the Soviet ambassador. They sent him at night. He went and negotiated an agreement between Kennedy and Khrushchev, his brother, outside of the structures of government, and he even went in a taxi in order to disguise it. Even in Britain, you can see there was a man called Alistair Campbell whom Tony Blair fired. There is a book written by the chief of staff of Tony Blair. The guy is called Jonathan Powell. He wrote a book called The New Machiavelli. You can see even these advanced countries that have had institutions for 500 years still have informal channels through which you can conduct diplomacy. Right now, there is a man who is conducting Trump's diplomacy, actually. He has been to DRC. He is always in Russia. I see him in Turkey and Saudi Arabia. What is the guy called? He's not a former employee of government. He's a friend of Trump. Clinton had a black man.
He's a father-in-law to one of his daughters.
Yeah, he's father-in-law to one of his daughters, yes. Clinton had a friend, what was that man, black man called? Who always handled his diplomacy. He was not in the government. Vernon Jordan, Vernon something. Jordan Vernon something. So the use of informal channels to achieve formal objectives is a common practice in diplomacy.
Actually, deep state is not our word. It's their word.
It is their word.
Yeah.
I have been involved, for example, in relations between Uganda and Rwanda. Because I have a good relationship with President Kagame, I have a good relationship with President Museveni, and I can carry messages in between. So sometimes state institutions are paralyzed or not the best suited positions to work. But always these formal institutions, rather informal institutions, must reinforce formal institutions. So formal institutions don't work in a vacuum. When you come to power, you will find hold a second.
Information.
I do not disturb your presentation. Even when you are choosing
just information.